Hey there. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome back. It's another Red Pill Religion podcast. Red Pill Religion, where amongst the things we say is that belief in the supernatural and transcendent is normal, healthy, rational, and evidence-based. So please support our work on redpillreligion.com. In these days of social media censorship, we've been censored, suppressed, blacklisted, whitelisted, and shadow banned many times. We're on our third or fourth channel, depending on how you count it. And so remember, you can always find us on redpillreligion.com. We would also appreciate it if you drop a dime in the PayPal tip jar, hit us on Subscribestar, hit our Bitcoin, or buy some of our merchandise, which you'll find all that on redpillreligion.com. And actually, tonight we are doing our special, The Week in Atheist Stupid, for the Freedom from Atheism Foundation. Freedom from Atheism Foundation is a group of professionals in various scientific and medical and legal professions who run anonymously but have one of the best critical of atheist sites and pages you'll ever find. If you're on Facebook especially, please be sure to check out Freedom from Atheism Foundation. And we are not the Freedom from Atheism Foundation, but we've agreed to do regular weekly podcasts for them showcasing their content. And we have begun a fundraiser. We are trying to raise $1,000. We are sharing the funds with Freedom from Atheism Foundation, which have been doing their fantastic work for something like 9 years now, I think. And we are also looking to improve our podcasting performance. Link is in the low bar and on our site. What we are looking for is $1,000 to get ourselves 1 year of high quality professional podcasting on Spreaker, to get our work distributed not just through YouTube and a few sites, but a bunch of different podcasting sites. So we'll be able to spread the message a lot farther. We're looking to buy a couple of high quality microphones so that we can get better, more professional sound quality on these shows. We're hoping for $120 for a year of hosting on DreamHost so that we can run our own private chat server and run things under Zoom. So if you can throw something in, we've got $25 to start, and we're trying to raise $1,000. If you're a supporter of Freedom from Atheism Foundation, or you like the kind of podcast work we do here on redpillreligion.com, where we regularly interview professional atheists and usually trounce them, or bring on some of the best and most interesting speakers, such as Dr. Steve Turley, Dr. Sarah Salviander, Dr. E. Michael Jones, quite a few people. We talk to rabbis, we talk to pagans, we talk to people of all different religious stripes here. And we could use your support. And we think our message is growing because freedom from atheism makes sense. We hate the secular world order and the idea that we can't be openly spiritual. There is nothing wrong with being a spiritual or religious person. So hit our fundraiser if you would. We'd really appreciate it. And then go find the Freedom from Atheism Foundation on Facebook. Now, joining me tonight also, we have two of Red Pill Religion's most important team members, Andrew Stratelites and Josh Brister, the Apologist Supreme. Say hello to everybody, Josh.
Hello, good to be here.
And also we have Andrew, one of our founding team members. How you doing, Andrew?
Pretty good. Glad to be here online.
All right, so hopefully we'll keep going until we reach our $1,000 mark. For at least we'll see how it goes. Look for us on Twitter and all of our various social media on that too. The folks at Freedom from Atheism would appreciate it, and so should we. We need just $1,000. That's not too hard. So in any case, in looking at what's been going on Freedom from Atheism, let's pull up their forum here so we can see what they got going on. Yes, they were kind enough to promote our show tonight. Thank you, guys. We do appreciate that. Now, what are some of the stories that have appeared lately? We like to call these segments The Week in Atheist Stupid, but this is an example of atheist non-stupidity. The City Journal has published an interesting piece on what has happened. Well, we can even open it up here and look at it on City Journal. There's this long, interesting article by Andrew Klavan, who I believe is a convert to Catholicism. I'm not sure if he is. I know he became a Christian. I think he converted to Catholicism. I can't remember. But he has a good piece that they put on FFAF, noting basically, there's all these atheist intellectuals sitting around looking at each other and saying, well, civilization is all often failing, but we can't have religion, so now what? It's this strange look at the way our intellectual class thinks these days. And I think it's very telling, because all of these, I'm of the opinion, frankly, that mandatory atheism was more and more a thing in our systems of higher education starting in the early 20th century. And it's just reached this zenith where we don't have college intellectuals who believe in God anymore. And they seem not to think that they're the problem on that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and basically, the problem is that it takes a generation or two for it to become obvious that these types of philosophies and moral systems and ways of running a civilization can't exist with the religious soil for it to grow in, so to speak. And that's sort of what happened, is that these people at Harvard, it started at Harvard, Yale held out longer, sort of dismissed the spiritual aspects of Christianity, and they were able to get along fine, but then the next generation that they taught weren't able to get along fine without it to the same extent, and it sort of degenerated from there.
Yeah, the universities were actually founded by Christians, and while a lot of snotty modern day types will snort at that, there's precious little evidence that I can see that seculars have done a better job at all. In fact, it's worse. And yeah, they've got into this intellectual zone where they basically pushed out religious people from the academy. Some universities are threatening to completely end any theology or philosophy departments that they have. And they seem to think that that's progress of a sort, and it's making the universities worse and worse. These intellectuals who cannot fathom that rational, intelligent people believe in God have really ruined the academy. I think all over the place. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. And the sort of irony is the founders of the Ivy League institutions realized the importance of spiritual formation, and they were and there was some back and forth depending on the parties, but they were founded in part to help form the spiritual lives of the future leaders of America and of the state governments and so on and so forth.
I think the bigger tragedy is the lack of intellectual diversity and rigor in the universities. The seculars thought they could take it over, and they can't. They're obviously incompetent. They really are. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I was going to say that part of it is that if you're secular, you're sort of free floating, right? You can be everyone from Locke to Nietzsche to Marx, if you're atheist, and if you have just even theism as your basis, there's a common ground that we can sort of work out the rules of the discussion with.
Yep. All right. Well, next story. Oh, this is one after my heart. It's a little bit of an editorial, but excuse me. More and more people are starting to see this. Iraq's Christians are close to extinction. And a lot of people would say that, oh, well, that's those religious people fighting from each other. But no, actually, a lot of this slaughter has to do with secular forces, not only within Iraq, because a lot of the fascist and Arabist forces are anti-Christian forces. So a lot of the Arabists are anti-Christian. They're secular. Sure, some Muslims go after them, the Christians, but some Muslims protect them. But in terms of the refugee status, all the Western powers, including the US, Canada, and Europe, with all the refugees fleeing, Christians from Iraq and other countries don't get to go to a lot of these countries. They are turned down in preference for Muslims. And that's just evil. And it's secular regimes doing that.
Yeah, and they don't even make it to the checkpoint or the airport, so to speak, which is the real big issue, is that on the ground they're being marginalized and prevented from fleeing into places where they would get the protection that they need, and it's really frustrating to me, and I know some of this because Anglicans do have Anglican churches in the Mideast, including in Iraq and uh, Egypt and all sorts of places. And Anglicans, of course, have deep connections to the West, both through the Church of England and Episcopal Church and so on and so forth. And so they try to get them out, but the government things aren't doing right by these Christians being persecuted.
Yeah, now somebody's going to say that I think Muslim refugees shouldn't be protected. And others are going to say I'm a sellout to the Muslim invaders. And it's neither one, guys. It's real simple. If there's a humanitarian crisis, it's not just bungled either. I think it's been on purpose. When they bring these Muslim refugees in, whatever their status, they're intentionally they could be being sent to Muslim countries, and they aren't. And they're being sent here preferentially over Christians being slaughtered. And the Christians would have a much better chance of integrating in Europe and the United States and Canada, they really would, than the Muslims. But instead, the Muslims are being shipped in and ghettoized in Europe and the United States in a way that is a breeding ground for more crime in the first place. It's just a great breeding ground for resentment and street gang activity, and the locals don't hate them, and so they hate the locals back, and it's just a disaster. The policy has been intentional, and it's been by the secular forces at places like the EU and sadly even the Obama administration, and to some extent the Trump administration. Trump's been not that much of a friend to Christians in the Middle East. It's been kind of sad. But in any case, let's move on to another story. What else have we had? Freedom from atheism. School students must remember that students retain their constitutional rights to freedom of religious speech and expression within the schoolhouse gates and all the way through the graduation ceremony. Is it time to stand up to atheists and support free speech? Yes, I would say it is. There is this general attitude that you should not speak of your religion or your religious views on American college campuses, and that should completely stop. Religious people should speak up. In fact, I think it's a matter of life and death that religious people, Christians especially, start speaking up and being counted and pushing back at bullies, including bullying teachers.
Yeah, I absolutely do think that. As an American history teacher, world history teacher also in the public schools, I feel that we have a responsibility to stand up for truth and not beat around the bush, but teach history how it really happened, how America was founded, based on virtue, a common sense, broadly conceived Christian, Judeo-Christian morality. And we need to stand up against these SJWs, or we're not going to have anything left to stand up for. So I'm calling us Christians, all of the Christians listening here, we need to stand up against this secular onslaught.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll just note that if a Hindu or a Jew or even a Muslim is valedictorian at a church at a school and talks about how their religion helped them or their spiritual understanding, I have no issue with that, and that's sort of the thing, is that we Christians actually are pretty good at not freaking out when other people who we disagree with talk about their spirituality. Yeah, well, we can be very good about it. Let's put it that way.
You're right. I was thinking about this. Now, you remember J.R.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis, how they used the imagination to communicate truth. Well, I think other religions, we stand up for other religions at Red Pill because, other religions are a part of the truth or can hold to some of the truth. So we Christians, don't have a problem with that, with the, you know, freedom of religion, freedom of religious expression. It's only the atheists or SJWs that are always complaining, that are always trying to get crosses removed from, you know, gravestones at cemeteries. This political correctness, and again, we need to stand up to it.
Yes, it's absolutely necessary. And here's just another one from featuring an article from American Vision. What I'm liking, by the way, notice how we've had quite a few stories here pushing back at the atheist tide, and I'm glad that should Christians accept that an anti-Christian secular society is inevitable? The answer is no. And what I'm noticing is we're seeing more and more people talk that way. We truly are. Just looking at what was on Freedom from Atheism or what we had on Red Pill Religion 2, 3, 4 years ago, we did not see the kind of pushback we're starting to see. More and more publications are starting to push back, and I'm glad to see it. I really am. What else have we got? Huh? Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, I mean, no secular society ever remained secular. I mean, even Russia or the Soviet Union, who literally tried to expunge religion through violence, is now seeing a huge resurgence of the Orthodox Church in the former Soviet Union. So it's just keeping a balloon underwater.
Yeah, they tried for 70 or so years to get rid of religion, and I think their high point after the Soviet Union came down was there were 10% atheists. In all that 70 years, they got 10% atheists. That's a terrible job. When people have the choice to believe in God or not, they choose belief in God, not irrational atheism.
Yep. And in fact, I'm sorry, excuse me, everybody. Here's another story right on cue of another atheist writer, a writer and lecturer named Philip van der Elst converts to Christianity. This is pretty normal. Excuse me. In fact, well, a common trope sold to the public is that once people go atheist, it's rare for them to go back. That is a simple, complete lie. In fact, most atheists, whether they were raised atheist or whether they turned atheist, you know, through some life event and decided there was no God, most of them apostatize out and become spiritual, religious, come to believe in some sense. It's a statistical reality. Very few people stay atheist. So it's always good to see more people doing it. Oh, that's from James Bishop. We had an interview with him once. He thinks we're crazy, by the way. But in any case, he's a good guy. Oh, I love this one. And this is absolutely true. The cult leaders of atheism have no background in theology, economics, social impact, social science, mathematics, ethics, philosophy, or leadership. That is not entirely true. That is not entirely true. Daniel Dennett has some kind of minor in philosophy. He's not very impressive. And Steven Pinker, while he is not identified as part of the atheist intellectual crew, is in fact a secularist ideologue atheist with a dumb, who's published anti-religious propaganda, like his book, The Better Angel of Our Natures. But he's not that much of a social scientist, and Daniel Dennett's not that much of a philosopher. So those are the only ones I can think of.
And, you know, when you look at the lower level leaders, right, like the people that run YouTube channels and things like that actually produce more of the content, the amount of credentials becomes less and less. Occasionally you might find someone who was a evangelical preacher or something, right? But as I say on Twitter sometimes, I'm sorry that you were taught by incompetent heretics.
Yeah. We do have, let's see, you even find them flashing PhDs. Of the YouTube crowd, we have King Crocoduck, who has a decades-old physics PhD, a physics PhD, and makes videos on evolution that are not true to contemporary evolutionary science at all. He's an incompetent quack. He's not qualified as a physicist, particularly to talk about biology. He's basically about as qualified as your average high school teacher at a nice suburban high school, or maybe somebody you might find teaching at a community college somewhere. Seriously, nothing impressive about that man, scientifically and philosophically. He's a nothing. When you look at Dr. Greg Banson, he flashes a degree that doesn't even mean anything. Assyriology has nothing to do with anything he talks about in terms of religion or the Bible or any of that. You'll notice this over and over again. Atheist intellectuals are almost always nothings, who are not qualified to say the things they say.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to apologize. I wasn't speaking for a while because I kept listening to these stories and threw up in my mouth. So, you know, that's what atheists do. They make me throw up sometimes. Actually, we were talking about, you know, a lot of these atheists that were once religious, and then they have such a vitriol for Christianity. Yeah, I think we've experienced that firsthand with Dan Barker. Yeah, and we've debated these professional atheists that seem to have this animosity towards God and Christianity, and you can really sense it when you're debating them.
It's totally, look, it is totally a psychological condition, and it's a lack of maturity too. Atheism is mostly a trait of males. You do have some females, they're a minority for sure, and they always will be. In terms of the men, but even still, even the women, it's the same way. They've almost all got daddy issues. They had abusive fathers or absent fathers. I had one try to say to me, and he was a young one too, obviously in his 20s, early 20s. And he says, haha, I don't have father issues. I liked my dad some. It's like, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
In past tense, you liked him. You have father issues. Sorry.
Yeah.
One book I'm reading right now, and I want everybody to get this, by Paul Vitz, the Fatherless. So it talks about how
Faith of the Fatherless. Yeah.
Yes, it talks about how atheists throughout history have had, you know, daddy issues, or have not had a dad or a father in their life. And you go over and over, and it happens again and again. This is a reaction against the lack of a father figure.
Well, see, they have surveys they do of multiple atheist organizations and other surveys of self-professed atheists, and shows over and over again they come from divorce backgrounds, you know, and other kinds of family trauma. It's a dead ringer. 90%, more than 90% of them are male. More than 90% of them are somehow fatherless. Abusive fathers, neglectful fathers, absent fathers. Lived in an orphanage, shift off to you know, some kind of boarding school, father who beat him, father who got thrown out of the house and they never saw him again.
Father who died when they were a child or an infant.
Yeah, yep, exactly. And all of those. Although when that dad dies, it's usually less trauma, believe it or not, as odd as that sounds. Dad dying is less traumatic than a divorce usually.
Yeah, I can believe that.
Yeah, just because you can see it as an act, you can see it's not that your dad ran away for real, you know, or not that you know what I mean.
Yeah. And I want to mention one book. Rodney Stark discusses all of this as well in his book called America's Blessing: How Atheism, or how Christianity is good for everybody, including atheists. And I hope everybody gets that book.
Rodney Stark is a great sociologist. Okay, so here's another story we've seen recently. Okay, yeah, I like this. We take no position on who should or should not have won the Australian elections, but we are pleased to see that the party that openly wore religion on their sleeve won. Secular hegemony is ending. It's true, too, by the way. Australia, even though it's an incumbent party, the Australian political party that won, I believe they're called the Liberal Party, although they're considered conservative, they're called the Liberals. I think that's who won. I didn't watch it too closely. I do know I've read in multiple reports. The leader of the party that won was talking about God a lot and wearing his Christianity on his sleeve, which has not been seen in Australia in quite some time. And they just won a resounding victory doing that. So I think the secular people in Australia are going to be a little upset.
Yeah, definitely. And that's sort of the irony, right? Is that even the Muslim minority in Australia probably trusts people that believe in God more than the atheists. At least that's sort of the perspective of a lot of the devout Muslims I know on Twitter.
Absolutely, it does not. Yeah, there's a lot of Muslims and a lot of Jews, and likely even Sikhs and others who would say, "I would rather have Christians in charge," not because they prefer Christians over everybody else, but because it's very clear that the secular order hates all religious people, and it's starting to get wearisome. It's starting to get quite wearisome. Let's see here. Oh, we got a new meme. Good, I love memes. We are scientists. We don't believe in God. And we get Sam Harris and Neil deGrasse Tyson. And then we were better scientists than you, and we believed in God. Louis Pasteur and Isaac Newton. That's a good one. I think that just riffs off on what we just said earlier, though. Prominent atheist so-called scientists are nothings for the most part. The only ones who are anything were probably... I'm sorry, go ahead.
Especially if they make a profession out of being an atheist ideologue. There are quite a few philosophers who happen to be atheists or naturalists, but their emphasis is on ontology or even philosophy of religion, and they don't make a name of for themselves as these militant or ideological atheists.
And we ran into one of those, and who we respect so much. We're going to be dialoguing with him again in August. Dr. Graham Oppie, a wonderful human being. We talked to him. It was very respectful. But when we debate some of these professional atheists who are getting paid by some organization, probably George Soros, probably someone else, who knows, these guys really hate God. And you can see it in their debate and the confidence that they come into these debates with. By the time they're done, they don't have much confidence. But they look at it from just one perspective, and they are so mad against God. You can really sense the vitriol when we talk to them.
Yeah, you can. And that vitriol gets dangerous. For example, here's another one. We see a rant from a Democrat, a politician who claims that there are people who want to turn the United States into a far-right Christian theocracy.
Wait, oh my gosh, if that's true, I'm going to register as a Republican.
I'll tell you what, I should become a Republican if that's what they want to do. We're both a little joking, but give me a break. And I like the editorial stand here. Despite atheist claims, and obviously the woman saying this self-identifies as one, despite atheist claims, few Christians want to establish a theocracy since the very concept goes against the teachings of Christ. It kind of depends on what you mean by theocracy, but yeah, for the most part. Sadly, atheists seem to be very eager to establish authoritarian atheist governments such as China, North Korea, or the Soviet Union, which outlaw religious freedom and expression. Yeah, it's funny how people who warn about an oncoming theocracy are usually the first to step down all religious freedom and expression that they can.
Yeah, and it's really strange. It's something that's in the forefront of their mind, and just like you said, and the article said, in some sense, a Christian theocracy is a contradiction in terms. Christianity always has a church and state distinction, even if we don't necessarily have separation like we do in the United States. So a theocracy, the closest thing to a Christian theocracy would be like England in the early 19th century. Where you have the House of Bishops and so on and so forth, or things like that. And it's silly because that is definitely not within the mainstream of any political party in the United States. The Republican Party wants the Republican Party at its best wants a secular world where secular means what all the faiths of the nations agree on. So it would be like what me as an Anglican and Max as Roman Catholic and our rabbi friends all agree on for what can be allowed in the secular world, right? And that's as close as you're going to get to a theocracy.
And a real secular order includes acknowledgement of and respect for various religious groups. It simply does. That's what a functioning, sane, secular order does, is it recognizes religious groups, especially the organized religious groups. I'm sorry, organized religion is never going away either. Speaking of which, we see more of what I think we've been seeing this in the natural sciences for about 3-4 decades now, which is why science is such a mess these days, slowly pushing religious people out, Christian people out of the sciences, and slowly pushing them out of everywhere else they're found in academia too, in a deliberate effort to purge them. Here's a story for one, how he was forced out of his PhD program because of his open faith in Christ in the college fix. This happens a lot, and this I contend is actually the main way the ideological subversion of the universities took place. Not just directly through cultural Marxist subversion of a direct type. Simply targeting Christians to get rid of them was enough. And slowly doing that over a period of generations, you get an intellectual class that has no contact with religion. And that's dangerous on so many levels, including for that ruling class, by the way, because the teachers in these colleges, they live in a bubble. They really think nobody intelligent.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. We come to think that, they'll start mocking you at first. And, we're supposed to be passive. No, if you keep being passive, sooner or later, your rights are going to be taken away from you. We need to fight back. We need to show that it's not okay to strip people, or because of in the name of political correctness, strip people of their careers or their livelihood because of something they said. So we Christians, we need to be outspoken about what we believe and not ashamed of it.
Absolutely. And furthermore, pushing back against the ridiculous, bigoted lie that what we think is irrational, delusional, stupid, purely sentimental. I mean, a Christian, of course, can be all these things, but there's nothing irrational, stupid, deluded, or any of that in thinking there's a God, thinking there's an afterlife. Nothing stupid about irrational about any of that at all. Here's another meme. I like this one. Yet there are no atheists globally leading the charge against world hunger. Talk the big game, but make no real difference. Yeah, that was actually noted more than 10, 15 years ago when the atheist movement got started. Everybody who was critical of it noted that atheists hardly do any real charity work at all, and because they don't. And it's been more than a decade and a half, and it's still the case. Atheists do almost no charity work. A few of them will brag about doing a little of it, but mostly they raise funds for political organizations like Planned Parenthood. And that's all they do. And they vote. They don't, it still remains to this case. Atheists do not give much to charity at all. You'll hear one of them once in a while saying, "No, I work in a soup kitchen. I do this, I do that." That's an anecdote. We can see from the numbers. Who's feeding the poor? Who's actually doing the anti-slavery work and anti-sex trafficking work? It's all religious people. Almost all.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And actually, the fact that the religious people are doing the anti-human trafficking things is causing contention in some like secular areas of like blue cities on the southern border, where they really dislike the fact that it's these Christians who are doing the anti-human trafficking stuff. And being good Christians, they're also anti-pornography and anti-prostitution and anti-abortion, and that's actually causing some political issues with the more secular forces in these blue cities in the near the American southern border.
Yep. And here we see more of the same sort of thing. Google recently offered an open Christian conservative severance package, basically because his values don't match the company's vision and they wanted him gone. And so, I mean, it's more and more clear secularism is an ideology, and secularism they want to crush religious people. They want them not part of the conversation. I remember when Google's used to say, "Don't be evil" was their motto, but I don't think that fits them anymore.
Well, they've actually expunged that from both their internal documentation and their external documentation.
Have they really?
Yes.
Really? They've expunged the whole "don't be evil" thing.
Yeah, I'll find an article and send it to you.
That's hilarious. Have you not noticed that all kinds of things that used to be on the internet are now gone? It's astounding. It's like a whole bunch of our history, even from the last 10, 15 years, 20 years on the internet, is gone.
They're trying to rewrite history, and this is what revolutionary societies or organizations, multinational organizations like Google or Apple or so forth, trying to do. That's why we Christians, we can't simply sit on the sidelines. We have to go into the marketplace and fight back against these guys.
And we're going to. I mean, the thing is that unless they accomplish mass slaughter or manage to really clamp down, the censorship and control to such degree that they literally start rounding us up into camps, which of course they could do, I suppose. But if that doesn't happen, they're going to lose. The demographics are against them. The Holy Spirit's against them. We're seeing it over and over. Even other religions. The British, I'm sorry, not the British. The Indian, the party's initials are BJP. I forget what they stand for, I think. But in any case, the Hindu Nationalist Party has just won a resounding victory in the Indian elections. Now, this is actually not real good news for Christians, because the Hindu nationalists do not like Christians. They don't like Muslims either. And so but what it indicates is that, spirituality is hugely important in this country. India, one of the most important in the world.
Yeah.
Australia, they just won with an overtly religious politician. We are expecting to see a lot of gains in the European Union elections, which actually are happening over the next 3 days. The UK just finished voting, I think, and other countries will be voting over the next 3 days. And parties which are explicitly religious or religion-friendly in orientation are expected to do extremely well.
Absolutely. And this shows the myth of that whole secularization thesis, the view that says that with technological growth and with the passage of time, religion will go to the sidelines and people will become less and less religious. There were so many things that people didn't take into account. The leading advocate of the secularization thesis was a man named Peter Berger, who wrote in the 1960s that religion would be dead but today. He has recanted his views. This is as of like 10 or 15 years ago, and now says religion is here to stay. So the secularization thesis, what a bunch of these revolutions are based on, is just hogwash, and it's refuted by the current scholarly sociological literature.
Yeah, and there's a pithy quote by Andre Malraux, who says the 21st century will be spiritual or it will not be. And he was born in 1901 and died in the 70s. But he saw the forces of secularism in the 20th century and realized that it's basically not compatible with human life.
Yep.
And that's the thing, and we can see that, right? Atheists don't breed, and I don't mean to be so. Well, I do mean to be blunt,
especially
but
gay
literally,
atheists.
Yeah, exactly, and I mean that's part of it too, right? Is they don't pass on their ideas, and they don't pass on progeny.
Yep, and a lot of it is explained by something called libido dominandi that everybody's been talking about lately on a lot of the YouTube channels I follow. Anyway, it's funny, they sell us godlessness, and they really do indoctrinate young people into godlessness. and they indoctrinate them into a nihilistic sex culture that really tends to lead to suicide, depression, and more. But okay, well, you know what? I think our time is about up. I'm going to remind everybody again, we could use your help on the fundraiser. We're hoping to make $1,000. We will be splitting with the folks at to support the Freedom from Atheism Foundation and to upgrade our podcasting equipment and software and platforms and get the Red Pill Religion phenomenon out onto other platforms in a much more automated and professional fashion. So we really appreciate your approach, your help. We also, of course, take PayPal regular PayPal donations, Bitcoin too. We would love to hear from you. Please give us a like and a subscribe here on YouTube as long as we're still here. Watch this channel. We are here every night. Tomorrow night, I've got Misha Popoff coming on, and we'll be talking with him more, I think, about, actually, we've got a few church and state issues we're going to be talking about, I think. I know Josh and Andrew have debates and other things planned that they've got coming up. We are here every night. So please give us a like. Please give us a subscribe. Please tell your friends or enemies. And God bless everybody.